£4,815. That's what my Audi TTS owes me up to this point. But it's about to get a lot more expensive. Up until now, we have completely replaced the interior to remove the damage that was caused by the fire which happened in this car after it was stolen. We've replaced the wing which was bent when this wheel fell off, and also repaired the side skirt which I've removed but not yet refitted. And I'm at the point now where if I put a standard set of wheels on the car and put everything back on, I'd have a complete running and driving car with a few faults left. But that really isn't my style. We need to upgrade this car to make it better than it was before it was stolen. And I mean that in every single sense. I want it to look better, I want it to drive better, and I want it to be nicer to live with every single day. As we mentioned last time, the screen is all scratched up, and let's face it, this is from a 2009 car. It's not going to have the functionality that something in 2022 should have. So I've been and bought a Apple CarPlay head unit for the TT. So let's kick off the video by fitting that. First thing to do to get this out is to put little keys in each corner to be able to release the locks which hold it in place, and then once those are in, I can use a trim tool to kind of jimmy the radio out and then unplug it from the car. So here is my new screen. I've already plugged the important loom in the back of it, and this essentially should plug into your existing loom and work, unless with TTs you've got the Bose upgrade, which it is going to need an adapter to work, but I will be able to power it up so we can see what's going on. Then I can leave it in loosely until I've got that adapter, and I should be able to just pull it back out again, pop the adapter in, and it all should work fine. So just to test the radio before I put it in, I put the main plug in the back of the radio and then the loom into the car and fire it up quick. Okay, so I've just plugged that main connector in, and straight away we've got power to the unit, and there is also an aerial which is just here. Now that I'm happy that that works, I can now bolt on the fascia which goes onto the back of the head unit itself using 6 bolts which come included, 1 in each corner and 1 on the top and the bottom in the middle. And now that's on, I can then fit it to the car. You've got to be a little bit careful doing this because you want to make sure all the cables and plugs are tucked well down into the dash, and then also push the bottom of the head unit in first and then the top. If you do it the other way around, it will probably break the clips. Right, so I've just quickly pushed in the head unit so you can see how it is. It's not like a super easy push fit. It is quite tight at the top, so you've got to make sure you get that right, otherwise you will break the clips, but I'd imagine it'll hold with, you know, 3 or whatever. It'll be fine. But yeah, obviously the speakers aren't going to work, so I'm still waiting for that adapter, but you get an idea. It's got all of the usual functionality that you get with your Apple CarPlay head units, and yeah, it just makes the interior much more modern. And if you do want to grab yourself one of these Apple CarPlay head units, there will be a link in the description with maybe a discount code too if you're lucky, but yeah, it's definitely a worthwhile upgrade. And more on the note about finishing off interiors, I've fitted these new little sun visor clips, so they are working perfectly. And time for a bit more of a clean up on the interior. I've found something that works really well on these fire damaged parts is using a magic sponge and just an interior APC and working at them a little bit, because it kind of seems to etch into the surface a little bit. This really kind of abrades away at that burnt section quite nicely and brings them up looking as good as new. But that is not the interior quite complete. There's still plenty more bits to clean up and more work to do, so let's get on with that. The next job is changing over this bonnet release mechanism so I can fit the new handle and put all these trims back on. This is a super common part to break on these Audi TTs, and the more I work with this TT, the more I'm realising that there is a lot of common weak points, especially on the interior. And it's nothing major, but it's just a lot of little niggles which you will need to sort if you do get one. But once that mechanism is removed from the car, I can then take the cable off and then start fitting the new one by putting the new cable in, putting the 2 10mm back in, and then I can start refitting the trims. The other parts that seem quite common to break are things like the glove box. Apparently that's quite a common fault. The things that hold up the parcel shelf in the back, in the boot, they're very common to break off. And it just seems a little bit strange, especially for an Audi product, that these have so many little niggles like that, really. But enough of me moaning. Once that trim's back on, the new handle can be tapped into place, and then I can start refitting the rest of the trims using my trusty trim hammer and making sure that they're secured so we're going to have no funny little rattles. And that is another little job completed. We seem to be making great progress on this car and pushing through it nice and quick. Right, the interior is now pretty much there. I'm actually quite happy with how it's looking. It just needs a good thorough clean, and it needs that little harness adapter to be able to make the new Apple CarPlay head unit work with the speakers and everything in there. So now the interior is just about there, we can turn our attention onto the exterior, and really really start to personalise that, and there's one part of a build which can really make or break it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the wheels. Now, these wheels, as we've already found out, are the wrong stud pattern for this car, so we cannot run them no matter what. That's why we can only fit 3 wheel bolts in there altogether. So these are going to be changed completely, and I do not like the style of these one bit. Now, luckily, when I was buying all of the interior parts, the chap who was breaking all the cars that I bought these parts from was actually breaking a slightly modified TTS. And on that car, I think he had, well, what is in my opinion, the perfect replacement for these wheels. So what I've bought is a Spiri, I believe they're FFR1s, which are a flow forged wheel, and they're 19s, and I think they're going to be perfect for the look that I'm going for on the TTS. Now, the frost that's on these isn't for dramatic effect, it's just that cold outside. But this sort of wheel sits nicely between kind of a racy wheel and a stancy wheel, and that is exactly what I like. But they are not 100% perfect. There's 2 things about them which I don't like. One is the brand of the tyres. I normally like to run a really nice brand of tyre because I've only ever had rear wheel drive cars, but I'm hoping that because this car is Quattro, it's a little bit more forgiving for not having the best quality tyre on there. And the other thing is the colour. Black wheels. I am not a fan of black wheels 99% of the time. This is definitely not an exception to that. I think I need to change the colour of these, along with the fact that they're not in perfect condition. There is chips around the edge, and yeah, they're not the cleanest wheels in the world, but the ice is definitely making them look worse than what they actually are. But regardless of that, I think they're still going to look a lot better than these scuffed up 3SDM 5x120 BMW wheels that are currently on it. So let's get these off, get those on, and then you can let me know your opinion. Hopefully these should be the perfect upgrade to give my Audi TTS exactly that look that I want, and also be able to drive the car with all the wheel nuts in. But before I can pop them on, I just pop a new wheel arch lining in place and then pop the new wheels on with new spigot rings to make sure that they're going to fit nicely on the hub and not jiggle around or be a pain in the arse to take on or off the car. Right, quick change of scenery. I've been trailered here and I've got a few jobs I need to sort while the car is on the ramp. I need to have a look in this wheel arch and see why my washer fluid bottle's leaking. I need to get my side skirt on, and also I am missing 2 wheel bolts in here because there's snap bolts in there, so I need to take all the brake and the disc off and then have a look at how I'm going to get them out. Right, so here's my plan of action. I'm going to take the caliper off, take the disc off, and then hopefully there's enough material on the snapped bolts to be able to get some mole grips on them and then pull them out. If not, well, it's going to get a bit more complicated. So it turns out anyway, the washer fluid bottle leak is from where one of the tabs was snapped. It's actually cracked the bottle ever so slightly, so I'm going to need to get a new one of those, but it's not super important for while I'm not driving the car. But the one thing that I do need to sort before I can even think about driving it is this wheel nut situation. It's not going to be safe to drive around on 3 wheel nuts, so I've got to take this caliper off with 2 21mm on the back which hold the caliper to the hub, and then I can start taking the disc off and then have a look at how I'm going to get these snap bolts out. Okay, it's not looking as good as I first thought because the bolts have pretty much snapped flush with the hub, but there is a slight possibility that I might be able to get mole grips on the back, spin it to like a certain point, then move around the front and then be able to get them out from the front. That's what I'm hoping anyway. So the first thing I wanted to try was getting mole grips on the back of the bolt and then see if I can turn it out from the front, which definitely did not work. I could not get them to loosen off. So one thing that did work on one of them was just tightening it so it pulls all the way through, and I eventually did get that out. But the other one was a completely different story. I'm not sure if it snapped slightly differently, so there's a bit more material on the head of it, stopping it from being able to be turned through the hub, and I couldn't loosen it either, and the more I tried, the more that I was damaging the bolt that was left, which didn't really matter too much apart from the fact that it just made it harder and harder to grip every single time. So once I'd established that that wasn't going to work, we then pulled out for the big guns. We tried absolutely everything to get this out, including hitting it with a chisel to try and crack the nut off or crack the bolt off or what's left of it so it loosens off from the car, which didn't work. We then tried heat, trying to get it to such a high temperature that it loosened off, and that didn't work either. And the one thing that did seem to work in the end was a combination of all of these things. including just drilling it. I'm not sure exactly how this works, but we just drilled a massive hole all the way through it, and then it kept on making that bigger and bigger until then we could actually get the mole grips to move the bolts slightly more every single time, and it did eventually start to wind out. But this was not a 5-minute job. It probably took an hour in total of trying all of these things to get there, but that's the thing, you got to keep trying and trying and trying until something does eventually work. So that looks like.
Tell me.
You're not. Well, that was an absolute mission, but we've got there in the end, and we've got 5 wheel bolts in every single wheel, which is probably a good thing. But the next thing I need to tackle is getting this side skirt back on, which should be a pretty quick job. So you may have seen in the last video that we repaired this side skirt with Matt, and we've done a fantastic job on it. All that's left to do now is fit it on the car. So the car has to go on an axle stand to be able to do this, because the side skirt itself actually goes round the jacking point, so you can't be jacking the car off where you want to put the side skirt. And the clips that come on the side skirts, they seem to be a single-use thing, so once you've pulled it off once, you do have to replace the clips, which are about £17 for 4 from Audi, so it wasn't too bad, I didn't think. So I could pop them into place, and then I could fit that side skirt on the car once and for all. Now, I might be wrong on this, but I think these side skirts are the same as the ones that come on the TTRS, so there's actually no need to change these. I think these are probably the best looking ones that you can get. So now it's repaired, I can get it back on the car, and we can deal with the whole paint blend thing slightly later on in the build. Once it's clipped in, there's then some bolts in the door shut and some bolts in the wheel arch liner, and that's done. So I'm now back home with the car, and I've done a few extra little bits off camera which weren't too interesting, so I didn't film them, but I'll show them to you very, very quickly. So I've got the boot back together and got it in one piece, and that is done, apart from the little aerial booster box or whatever it is that goes around there under the carpet. I've got the parcel shelf holders back in, and just as a temporary measure, I've chucked the front bumper on just to give you an idea of how it's going to look, but that I've decided now is definitely not staying. You may also have noticed earlier in the video that I had this door card off. It's because the electrics weren't working in the door cards, which I didn't realise last time, so I had to take the wiring loom out the old ones and fit it to these ones, and now all the electrics are working fine. And I've just realised you guys haven't actually seen the wheels fitted on the car properly, so let's take a quick look at that now. I think it's definitely safe to say that progress is going in the right direction, and the car is becoming much more complete and starting to look better with every single video. The interior is definitely looking much smarter as well, especially with this new Apple CarPlay head unit in. It's just transformed it in my opinion, and I cannot wait to actually drive this car. But you guys are going to have to wait a little bit to see what I've got in store, especially for the exterior of the TTS, because it's going to be completely transformed, but you're going to have to wait until the next video to see that. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please do consider doing so. There's so many of you watching these videos which aren't subscribed, and every single one of you that does massively helps the growth of the channel and push the builds further in the future. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have the best Christmas. Please don't forget to smash a like on this video too, and I'll catch you next time.